Hello and welcome to Dr. Harry's Healthy Corner. This is where we meet each week at the corner of lifestyle and science, where we discuss small changes that you can make to your lifestyle that supports your health and your freedom. Because after all, health equals freedom. And if we want to take our health back into our own hands and have the freedom to do what we want to do and move the way we want to move and think the way we want to think, then it's really important to study the science of lifestyle medicine. So today we wanted to talk a bit about self-care. We have spoken in the past about high blood pressure and taking care of our brain and taking care of our hearts. Did you know that self-care ranks right up there with taking care of all of those things, because self-care is an important part of your health plan. So it's important to take your self-care personally and seriously. So basically what self-care is taking the time to do the things that you need to do to feel centered and clear-headed, so you're better able to make decisions for yourself and for your loved ones, and you're better able to cope with the challenges that life inevitably throws our way. When we don't take the time to do those things that help us to feel centered, what we're doing is we're sending the message to our body, we're sending the message to our minds that we don't deserve to thrive and we don't deserve to be successful. And inevitably we end up feeling irritable. We may end up feeling very resentful and most likely end up feeling overwhelmed, stressed, and depleted. This is why self-care is so important. Self-care does not equal selfish. It doesn't mean that you think you're the center of the universe. It is simply pushing your recharge button. Everything needs to be recharged. Everything needs to be refueled. And you are no exception to that rule. So self-care is taking care of the house and the home that you live in, your body, your mind, and your spirit. Because if you don't take care of your body and your mind, who will? So that is primarily what self-care is about and what we want to talk about today. So let's do that. So I love this quote. It says, when you take the time to replenish your spirit, it is at that time you can serve others from a place of overflow, from a place of abundance, from a place where you don't feel resentful, from a place where you're joyful to do those things. And this quote goes on to say, you cannot serve from an empty vessel. Your car cannot run on an empty tank. So it's important to learn to take care of yourself. So self-care is not a waste of time. It's just learning to use your time more sustainably. And when you're able to do that, what it means that you become more time efficient. So you're able to actually get more accomplished than you would have before. Because when you're not taking care of yourself, and when you're approaching things from a place of being overwhelmed, you become flustered and you tend not to think very clearly, and that of course can compromise your ability to take care of yourself. So today we want to talk about some simple steps that you can take to start that self-care process. So one of the things that we need to do first is to schedule that time. It is just as important as anything else that you schedule. It should become habitual for you. It should become as habitual as brushing your teeth in the morning or taking a bath, because all of those things are taking care of yourself. When you schedule the time to do the things that make you feel centered, then you're able to get more accomplished. So some things that might make you feel more centered are perhaps taking a walk in nature. We know that nature helps us to feel more centered. We know that nature helps us to feel less stressed and less moody and less anxious and less depressed. So, and we also know that movement and exercise also helps to do that as well. So we can combine the two of those things. We can combine the two of those things with friends, and that adds yet another layer of the way that we want to take care of ourselves. So we want to be able to do those things. And some of us, that may be morning meditations. For some of us, that might be a gratitude journal. For some of us, that might be starting the morning with a cup of tea or coffee while simply watching the sunrise. And that is the way that we like to get our days started. For some of us, it is sunrises. So whatever it is for you, think about taking the time, scheduling the time to do those things so that you can feel more self-centered and more efficient. The other thing that we want to do is establish boundaries. Boundaries create a place where we can learn to start taking care of ourselves more sustainably. So, for example, oftentimes we might find ourselves saying yes when we actually want to say no, because we know we don't have the time, we know we may not have the energy, but somewhere inside we feel that we should. We are feeling an external pressure that tells us that we should be doing this thing, and ultimately we want to say no. So what that creates is an energy of resistance, and persistent resistance leads to exhaustion. And so we can become exhausted from doing this. We can literally shoot ourselves into exhaustion. So my suggestion would be, when you're contemplating doing something, if you can't say I want to or I choose to, maybe that is something that you should consider perhaps not doing at that moment in time. So establishing boundaries also means learning to let others know when their energy is perhaps not conducive to your energy at that time. So boundaries allows us a safe place so that we can establish our healthcare routine. The next and very important thing that is part of self-care is eating well. And eating well does not have to be this overwhelming chore. It doesn't have to be juicing 6 times a day. It doesn't mean that you have to go on a fast. It doesn't mean any of those things. It means eating the foods that help you to feel better, eating the foods that nourish your brain and therefore improves your moods, eating the foods that gives you the energy that you need to do the things that you want to do. MyPlate.gov has a nice diagram that really just gives us a nice place to start. And it basically, what we're looking at here is half of our plate needs to be vegetables and fruits, primarily vegetables, and then the other half can be divided into quarters, where a quarter of that is protein and a quarter of that is your whole grain that's going to provide you with high fiber. It's going to provide you with minerals, and it's going to provide you with the energy that you need to keep your day going sustainably. So part of taking care of yourself, part of taking care of the home and the house that you live in, is learning to eat well. Next, we want to talk about sleeping well. We know the importance of sleep, and many of us struggle with sleeping well, and many of us experience bouts of insomnia. Many of us, however, choose to stay up because we have a fear of missing out. We don't want to miss that show. We don't want to miss that conversation. We just don't want to miss anything. So we tend to perhaps engage in our phones a little bit longer than we should. We perhaps have more screen time, such as the television, a little bit longer than we should. Please know that your body is designed with a rhythm that's an awake rhythm and a rhythm that puts you to sleep. And anything that disrupts that sleep rhythm can create a sleep pattern disruption and insomnia. So some things that can help you to get to sleep well is perhaps one thing might be taking a bath an hour before bedtime, a warm bath an hour before bedtime. What that does, it seems, is warm the core up. So then what that does is actually cools the core down, because it dissipates heat from the core to the extremities, and cooling the body helps us to sleep well. You might want to add a little bit of a relaxing essential oil into that bath, something that helps us to relax a little bit more. You might want to add a little bit of Epsom salts into that. That Epsom salts has magnesium, which has some relaxation properties as well. Another tip is that we sleep better when we are cooler, so you might want to make sure that your room is cooler. There are actually some studies that suggest 68 degrees. I've found that that's a little cool for me, so perhaps you might want to experiment with something like 72 degrees, just cool enough for you to be able to fall asleep and stay asleep. Other tips might be avoiding the use of alcohol and caffeine, especially after 4 p.m. Because even though it may feel that alcohol helps us to fall asleep more easily, what happens is that we tend to have interrupted sleep. It interferes with our deep sleep pattern. It interferes with our REM pattern. It really interferes with the sleep pattern that is the most restorative for us. So those are things that we might want to think about. We also want to disconnect from our screens. We also want to remove light from our environment because we want to encourage the sleep hormone melatonin to be able to come out and play. If you're not able to sleep, consider doing a warm glass of milk or perhaps some cherries. That has a natural melatonin source. The other thing that you can do to help enhance your self-care is taking some time off. I promise you that the world will still be there when you come back. The world will still be there. So taking time off, what taking time off allows us to do is allows us to rejuvenate. It allows us to relax. It allows us to actually engage that creative brainwave, the alpha brainwave. So we tend to come back more rested, but also more creative. And so studies are also telling us the importance of taking vacations and time off in terms of our health. Those individuals who took less vacations or skipped many years of vacation were actually more prone to chronic illnesses that may lead to curtailing and them not living as long as perhaps they could have if they took a vacation. So it's important to take time off and take a vacation. The other thing that we might want to think about is that let's not make this a competitive process. Self-care is not a competition. We are not trying to self-care better than the next person. That is not what we're trying to do. We want to make self-care about us, about doing the things that we need to help us to feel centered and to help us to feel clear-headed. We are not competing with our co-workers. We're not competing with our friends to see who can self-care better. So we are not thinking, oh, I juice more than you do, or I do more miles than you do. When we start comparing our self-care regimens, then it doesn't become self-care. It may turn into self-criticism, because we might start thinking, oh, I'm not perhaps eating as many vegetables as Sally, or perhaps I'm not working out as long as Sally, so maybe I'm not taking care of myself as well. The questions that you might want to ask yourself at this point is, are the things that I'm doing helping me to feel stronger, helping me to think more clearly, helping my numbers improve, helping me to feel more centered, more grounded? Are the things that I'm doing helping me to feel healthier? Because those things may be a little bit different than perhaps what Sally is doing to help her to feel more centered and more grounded. So nix the competition when it comes to self-care, because it's not about competition. And then the other thing we want to do with self-care is realize that we need to extend the same kindness that we extend to others to ourselves. So if someone that you love comes to you in distress and they're overwhelmed and they're feeling completely just overwhelmed, what would you say to them? You perhaps wouldn't say, well, this is your fault for doing X, Y, and Z. You'll probably be supportive and kind and help them to make choices that help them to feel better. And this is the same thing that you want to do to yourself. So you want to extend kindness, love, and acceptance to yourself, because that is primarily where self-care begins. Self-care begins with self-acceptance. So once you start accepting and loving yourself, then your tendency to want to take care of the things that you love is much higher than taking care of the things that you don't care about. And finally, learning to love yourself is like learning to walk. It's essential, it's life-changing, and it is the only way to stand tall. It's essential, it's life-changing, and it is the only way to stand tall. So, as we said, learning to love yourself is essential, it's life-changing, and it is the only way to stand tall. So today I wanted to thank you for joining me while we talk about self-care. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask me any questions that you might want to know to help you to develop your own self-care routine. Also, check out the other videos on YouTube if you've missed any of the other videos. So please feel free to do that and to subscribe to my YouTube channel. And next time, we most likely will be talking about Parkinson's, because some of you have expressed interest in learning a little bit more about Parkinson's. And so if there are other things that you want to learn about, please feel free to drop me a Facebook message or just contact me and let me know what it is that you would be interested in learning about. So until next time, bye-bye.